You didn't fall in love, you fell into a mirror, and what you saw wasn't her beauty, it was your abandonment, dressed in skin. No one talks about this. That most of what we call chemistry is just trauma remembering itself. That some women don't enter your life to complete you, they enter to confront you by echoing what you refuse to face. Carl Jung warned that the unconscious will always seek expression, and if you ignore it, it finds a face, a voice, a body, often hers. You're not haunted by her. You're haunted by what she revealed, the shadow you've buried under discipline, duty, and denial. Here's the brutal truth. She wasn't your destiny. She was your diagnosis. And every time you ran back to her, it was never about her. It was the boy inside you, begging to be seen by you. He thought he found love, but it was something more primitive. It wasn't desire, it was hunger. And hunger doesn't choose, it devours. This wasn't romance, it was emergency. She walked in, and his nervous system whispered, finally, relief. But that's not love. That's the body mistaking intensity for connection. And that's how men confuse a scar for a soulmate. The boy who wasn't held learns to crave chaos over calm. Stillness reminds him of abandonment. Intensity feels like being noticed, so when she screamed, cried, pulled away, he called it passion. He didn't know yet. The absence of love makes even pain feel intimate. He didn't choose her. His wound did. Jung warned of the shadow, the denied self that returns through others. And when you don't face that shadow, it finds a mouth, hers. She became the voice of every unprocessed ache he thought he buried. He didn't meet her, he resurrected her. From the ruins of his own silence, the anima corrupted becomes obsession. He mistook projection for prophecy. What he called fate was just repetition, the same drama in a prettier dress. She didn't break him. She revealed where he was already bleeding. Men like him don't fall in love. They fall into survival. It looks poetic, it feels divine, but it's just the unconscious crying through dopamine. You know it's not love when your peace dies as your heart awakens. He needed her, not as a partner, as anesthesia. The same way a man needs the drink not for flavor, but for silence, not for joy, but to hush the memory of his unworthiness. She became his ritual, distraction dressed as destiny, and every kiss was a confession of how lost he felt without her. She mirrored what he wouldn't admit. He was starving for touch, for worth, for a sense that he mattered, and because she offered that, even if twisted, he bowed, not out of love, but out of lack. That's how the puppet binds itself to the handler and calls the strings destiny. He didn't love her. He loved who he became around her, needed, chosen, seen. But that's the lie of trauma. It makes you mistake rescue for romance. And the soul, unhealed, will always equate familiarity with fate. She didn't create his storm, she gave it a name. And in that name, he lost himself, beautifully. She was never the chaos. She was the echo, the scream of his neglected boyhood. And until he hears that scream with his own ears, he'll keep calling it her. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels dangerous. To a man wired by betrayal, calm feels like the prelude to pain. Stillness isn't soothing, it's suspicious. So when she brought the storm, he didn't run. He breathed, because some men only feel alive when there's something to survive. He mistook adrenaline for affection, not because he's foolish, but because his nervous system was trained in war. When your childhood taught you that love means walking on eggshells, you grow up thinking anxiety is intimacy. And so he kept choosing chaos, thinking it meant he mattered. Jung spoke of trauma as a loop, the psyche's attempt to finish an unfinished story. But when that story was written in neglect, the ending is always fire. She didn't bring confusion, she brought familiarity. And that familiarity felt like home, even if it burned, because home was never gentle. It was just consistent pain. He couldn't sit with peace, not because peace is boring, but because peace doesn't prove anything. But chaos. Chaos made him useful again, alert, needed. So he stayed. Not for her, but for the feeling of being essential, even if that feeling was bought with bruises. That's the trap, thinking you're in love, when really you're just addicted to the chemical echoes of trauma. He wasn't choosing her. He was reenacting the only script he knew. The script where being ignored felt like death, and being yelled at felt like recognition. He told himself she was passionate, wild, untamable. But the truth was simpler, darker. She matched the storm inside him. And when two storms meet, they don't cancel out, they multiply. That's why he felt alive, because his pain finally had a playmate. Jung would say the corrupted anima doesn't heal the man, she hijacks him. She becomes a siren, dragging him back into the unfinished labyrinth of his youth. He thinks he's falling in love, but he's just falling into the past. One that keeps wearing new names, new perfume, new manipulation. She wasn't his cure, she was his symptom. A walking flashback disguised as fate. And every time she screamed, he felt like a boy again, scrambling to earn love. But what he called fire was just fear with lipstick. He said she played games. But the truth? She didn't hide her chaos. He just kept translating it into affection. She didn't deceive him. He deceived himself. Because when a man hasn't sorted his inner world, he projects clarity onto confusion and wonders why it always hurts. He was never taught the difference between attention and care. So when she touched him, he thought it meant safety. When she stayed silent, he thought it meant mystery. But silence isn't always sacred. Sometimes it's just withholding. And what he called affection was possession in disguise. The psyche does this. It turns wounds into prophecies. He didn't fall for her. He fell for what he wanted her to rewrite. She became the revision of a mother who was too distracted, or a first love who made him feel invisible. And when she left, it wasn't just her walking away, it was history repeating. Jung warned us, what we reject in ourselves doesn't disappear. It externalizes, and then we worship it. He didn't love her. He loved the part of himself he buried, the fire he silenced, the emotion he never had permission to feel. And in her chaos, it came back, distorted, but alive. He wasn't confused by her. He was confused by the mirror, because she didn't say she was salvation. He just needed her to be, and every time she pulled away, it wasn't betrayal, it was prophecy. He expected abandonment, and the psyche always delivers what the soul rehearses. This is why pain can feel sacred. It confirms our worst beliefs. He thought, see, I knew I wasn't enough, but that wasn't truth. That was programming, the internal critic looking for proof and calling it love. That's how trauma makes a man loyal to his own destruction. She was not a mystery. She was a trigger, a living embodiment of everything he refused to sit with. His shame, his need, his fear of being seen and discarded. She didn't break his heart. She broke his illusion. And the illusion was the only thing keeping his pain romantic. He wasn't looking for her honesty, he was begging her to rewrite his story, but no woman can undo a script she didn't write. And when the performance collapsed, he wasn't angry at her. He was grieving the fantasy, because the lie he loved was softer than the truth he feared. He wanted to be loved, so he dimmed his edges. He softened his voice, folded his boundaries, erased his needs. And then he wondered why she no longer saw him. But how can anyone see a man who hides every part that makes him real? She didn't ghost him. He trained her by disappearing first. Masculinity, when denied, doesn't vanish. It collapses inward. He replaced his inner king with a performer, agreeable, romantic, endlessly adaptable. Not because he was kind, but because he feared rejection more than invisibility. And in that fear, he became a placeholder in his own story. Jung said, when the king is not claimed, the shadow rules. He let the servant speak for the sovereign, and so she never met his depth, only his performance. A man who bends too far to be loved will snap, not from her betrayal, but from his own absence. She didn't disrespect him. She never met him. She met the version trained by silence and shame. The man who thought if he just gave enough, proved enough, loved enough, he'd finally be chosen. But love built on disappearance becomes a slow erasure of self. He wore devotion like armor, but it never fit, because deep down he knew he wasn't being respected, he was being tolerated. And still, he stayed, because some men would rather be ghosts in a woman's life than alone in their own skin. She couldn't honor him, not because she was cruel, but because there was nothing to honor. No standard, no spine, no clarity. And a woman cannot revere a man who won't claim himself. You can't be cherished when you treat your soul like a burden. He believed vanishing parts of himself was the cost of being kept. But a kept man is not a sovereign one. He becomes reactive, desperate, easily manipulated, a shell waiting for scraps. She didn't destroy him. He emptied himself preemptively and called the hollowing love. He wasn't forgotten. He was never fully present. He walked into the relationship already amputated. And when the chaos came, he had no structure to stand on, not because he lacked strength, but because he abandoned it. And now, the echo he hears isn't her voice. It's the silence of the king within. He wasn't looking for a woman. He was looking for salvation, not a partner, but a rescuer. And in doing so, he placed his becoming in her hands. Hands that were never meant to carry what he refused to claim. This is the seduction of romantic fantasy. It offers relief from responsibility. She'll fix it. She'll heal it. She'll finally make it all make sense. But she can't, because she's not your initiation. She's your reflection. And what you see in her is what you still run from in yourself. Jung warned us. The unintegrated man doesn't love, he projects. He pours his soul into her, hoping she'll give it back shaped and whole. But no woman can sculpt what a man won't face. She becomes the stage, but the script is still his. And he keeps rewriting her role to fit a story he's too afraid to finish alone. He thought she failed him, but he assigned her a job description soaked in desperation. He made her the healer of a wound she didn't cause. And when she walked away, he mistook it for betrayal, when it was just the end of an illusion. This is the modern man's quiet addiction, the hope she'll make him whole. But wholeness doesn't come through intimacy, it comes before it. Otherwise, love becomes anesthesia, and partnership becomes a stage for regression, not evolution. He didn't want her, he wanted relief. He was seeking completion when he should have been seeking confrontation. Because the man he feared becoming was still inside him, waiting, not for her kiss, but for his own reckoning. And until that confrontation happens, she'll always be misused. She didn't fail him. She simply mirrored the fracture he refused to touch. He wanted her to mother the boy inside him, but resent him like a man. He asked for empathy while denying responsibility, and called her cruel when she stopped carrying his weight. But the weight was never hers. No woman can complete what a man avoids. She can inspire, reflect, challenge, but not rebuild. If he won't descend into his own silence, she'll echo it. If he won't rise into his own standard, she'll collapse with him. She was never the answer. She was the reminder that he still hadn't asked the right question. He swore it was destiny. The way she looked at him, the way her chaos wrapped around his nervous system, it felt ancient, magnetic, undeniable. But it wasn't sacred. It was scripted. Scripted by a boyhood where love and pain were always the same voice. He didn't fall for her. He fell into recognition, not of who she was, but what she activated. The emotional quicksand he called chemistry. That was just his nervous system reliving the trauma of inconsistent affection. She didn't seduce him. His past did. Jung called this repetition compulsion, the mind seeking to repair its original wound by repeating it. He thought she was a chance to heal, but what he really sought was reenactment. And in her chaos, he saw a chance to finally win the game he never signed up for. Every scream felt familiar, every silence felt earned. She reminded him of someone, not consciously, but viscerally. A mother too tired, a father too cold, a home where presence came with pressure. So when she disappeared emotionally, he didn't resist. He chased, like a boy who learned that love must be earned through suffering. She wasn't the first, just the most recent echo, and he called it love because it hurt the way it always had. Pain in his body had become the price of attachment. So peace, that felt suspicious. Love without anxiety, unbelievable. She didn't create that confusion. She confirmed it. This is why he couldn't leave, because walking away from her would have meant confronting a deeper truth, that the real captor was his own memory, that what he missed when she left wasn't her, but the false safety of a chaos he had normalized since childhood. She was not fate. She was familiar, not because she was meant to stay, but because she mirrored the wound. And the psyche clings to what it knows, even if it burns, even if it breaks, especially if it feels like home. She wasn't his soulmate. She was his symbol, a symbol of unfinished grief, of a love that always hurt. And until he could feel that pain without chasing it, he would keep rewriting the past, using new names. He didn't need her to stay. He needed to remember who he was before the echo. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. He told himself he was mature, patient, evolved, but the truth was darker. He wasn't forgiving her. He was avoiding himself, avoiding the explosion that would happen if he actually said what he felt. Every time she crossed a line, he swallowed his voice, not out of peace, but out of fear. Because if he got angry, she might leave, and deep down he believed he didn't have the right to demand respect, so he wore silence like armor and called it wisdom. But silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's self-abandonment in a more polite costume. And when you mute your truth long enough, it doesn't die. It festers, turns into depression, numbness, that strange exhaustion he couldn't explain. Jung said, "What you repress returns, just in a darker form." He confused paralysis for patience. He thought endurance meant healing, but he wasn't enduring love. He was enduring neglect. Forgiveness became a bypass, not a breakthrough, and he called her wounded so he could keep avoiding his own. There's a quiet guilt in men, the kind that silences their anger. Don't raise your voice. Don't rock the boat. Be understanding. But the soul keeps score, and one day the smile he wears starts to crack. Not because she changed, but because he never demanded truth. He wanted peace, but peace without confrontation is just delayed collapse. And every time he forgave without clarity, he taught her how to treat him. Not because she was evil, but because he trained her to expect no resistance. And that is how boundaries rot. She wasn't the manipulator. She was the mirror of a man who couldn't protect his own fire, who thought being nice would be enough to be kept, who believed love meant absorbing damage. But unexpressed rage doesn't disappear. It turns inward and starts to feed. He thought he was healing, but he was just keeping the peace in a war no one dared to name, until one day, the weight of his silence became unbearable. And in that final silence, he heard the truth. She didn't destroy you. Your passivity did. She didn't break the rules. There were no rules. Just a man who mistook openness for absence and thought being flexible meant being lovable. But flexibility without a spine is collapse. And collapse isn't love. It's erasure. He said she was uncontrollable. But what he really meant was, I never led. He hoped love would self-regulate, that presence would replace clarity, but love without boundaries turns the sacred into chaos. And a man who fears saying no ends up with nothing left to protect. She wasn't wild, she was just uncontained. And nature, when uncontained, doesn't become more beautiful. It becomes destructive. Jung spoke of the father archetype, the one who gives form, direction, structure. Without it, love isn't tender, it's tribal. Emotional survival replaces mutual growth. He mistook surrender for self-abandonment. He thought yielding would earn peace. But she didn't need his compliance. She needed his clarity. And when he failed to offer it, she filled the void with fire. There's a reason men burn out in love, not from the weight of women, but from the weight of their own silence. He kept giving more space, more chances, more flexibility, until nothing remained but emotional quicksand. And still he called her intense, as if she built the labyrinth he never mapped. She didn't ignore his values. She never met them, because he never named them. And in the absence of direction, she brought her own, chaotic, primal, reactive. Not because she hated him, but because nature despises a vacuum. This isn't about control, it's about containment. Love isn't supposed to be anarchic, it's supposed to be intentional. But if a man won't lead with vision, he'll drown in volatility. And when the emotional fire consumes him, he'll call it betrayal, when it was just his abdication in disguise. He blamed the beast, but never noticed the leash had rotted long ago. She didn't violate anything. He never protected anything. And when you don't guard your inner temple, don't be surprised when chaos moves in and makes herself at home. So now what? You've seen her eyes, but did you see your shadow in them? You've chased her chaos, but did you ever ask what part of you needed it to feel alive? This wasn't about her, it never was. She was just the echo, the mirror, the invitation to return to the parts of yourself you keep burying under performance and pain. Ask yourself, what boundaries did I erase to be loved? What voice did I silence just to be kept? What part of me have I projected onto women because I was too afraid to claim it? Because until you face those questions, until you sit with the ache you've tried to turn into romance, you'll keep mistaking reflection for reality and calling dysfunction fate. But there's a different way, not softer, not easier, but real. Become the man who no longer chases mirrors, because he's finally turned around to face his own. The journey begins now. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us as we walk the road of brutal self-knowledge and quiet resurrection. Before you go, if she was the mirror of your shadow, wait until you meet the part of the feminine Jung said would devour you, not because she's evil, but because you're unprepared. The next video isn't a warning, it's a reckoning. Watch, the dark feminine archetype Carl Jung said would break you.